Stick to sports, a term that athletes are now starting to be confronted with when they choose to use their platform to speak on social issues. But is this term a new phenomenon, or has this been occurring throughout history? When you hear someone say stick to sports, what do you think that means?
I think when somebody says stick to sports, that it means that they're discounting somebody's multifaceted personality and the fact that people are not just athletes or not just sportscasters, that they have a way of moving in the world that might be political, and that when somebody says stick to sports, it's really denying that that person has like a political or cultural background.
I think 9 times out of 10 they mean it to be insulting, because the entire genesis and root of the phrase stick to sports means you're not smart enough to talk about this other topic, so stick to sports. And sometimes in the cases of women, it's a very dressed up way of basically saying go back to the kitchen, right? Stick to what you know, like despite the fact that you may pay taxes, despite the fact that you may that you're a citizen in this country, you only are qualified to talk about this one thing.
New to the term, but it's kind of like telling athletes that that like social issues aren't really their problem, that they should stick to what they're doing, which is I don't know, it's a little offensive, because like I know like I'm in college, but adult athletes, like they're grown men and women who like have their own views. You can't just be like, oh yeah, let's stick to sports, like you don't know any better. Like that's a little offensive.
For me, it always brings back memories of like people just saying, oh, if you just stick to your sport, that's enough. That's all you're expected to do is just be an athlete and show up and work hard. But the way that I was raised, my parents always told me that that was the absolute last thing that I was allowed to do, right?
Black athletes have endured the stick to sports term in the past. The only difference today is that it's actually being said to them directly.
It's evolved over time where you didn't even have people of African descent in the sports arena being asked questions because they weren't there. Then you had them there, and the assumption was that they wouldn't have anything to say except for how great it was to be an athlete. And then you have two people, athletes themselves, standing up and making a stand, and that then politicizing in the minds of the public this connection between particularly African-American athletes and politics.
Addressing the statement stick to sports is only the beginning, and how to continue to use sports as a political vehicle is something that resonates with Jamel, Justin, and
How has that happened in your experience? Like, what do you feel about that?
Well, especially now with the political and racial climate that we're in, we get told that a lot, and I resent the entire idea of it, not just because as again a citizen of this country, it's an affront. As long as I keep paying taxes, I'm not sticking to sports. All right. So but beyond that, I mean, with these sports stories, there is this cross-pollination between racial, gender, and political issues. So even if we wanted to stick to sports, we couldn't, because the athletes and sports itself are dragging us into these conversations. We don't wake up every day and say, let's discuss the Affordable Care Act. We don't do that.
There's another group of people out there who have that calling within inside themselves, and they feel that I have to speak up because there's some kid who's just like me from a different neighborhood in a different part of the country who needs to hear me speak up so that they can get to the point that I'm at now. And I think that's the power of it. It's about like the kids and the young folks, and it's not for everybody, but there are special people who decide that they want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And
is it for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that not only are you, as an athlete, someone who has the platform to communicate and affect change in your area, but you have the skill set necessary. You have the ability to unify behind a common purpose with a group of people. You have the charisma, you have the personality, the work ethic, and you know how to use different methods to achieve a goal. So athletes are the perfect personality types to affect change in a lot of ways. So I feel like it's my obligation.
All the people like Colin Kaepernick, the NBA team, WNBA team, sports teams that are like wearing the shirts, kneeling down, I feel like it's really important because it says like we won't stand for it. Like there are people out there, like famous people that younger people in my generation look up to, and they can say like, this is not okay, this is something that needs to change.
I like it. I kind of wish that we could do it, but I wouldn't even dream of suggesting that. But I think it's a great thing to see that athletes like care enough about like what's going on. They're not just like sticking to their sport. Like they understand that they have a voice and they're using it for a good reason.
Why wouldn't you suggest it?
I think not that like we've talked about it a lot at BU, but just I don't know. It's like I wouldn't do it for basketball in a way. Like if I felt like I wanted to, I would definitely go out and do some of the marches that are in the city or like some of the ones that are on at March Plaza.
As athletes continue to involve themselves politically, whether as a team or individually, what the future will hold for the term stick to sports is to be determined.
How do you see this kind of athlete advocacy moving in the future?
I would hope that we have people, given our current political climate, we have people who, my impression is, might not have been political before and are starting to become political in a different way, or starting to become engaged in the world in a different way, which I think is the one sort of silver lining of things as they are. So I think in the future, I think we're going to probably see more athletes, particularly more young athletes who maybe in high school or when they were coming up in training were not encouraged to engage politically. I think we're going to see more who are going to feel as though they have a responsibility to engage just because of the political climate we have. I think that's a good thing in the long run. I think though having to remain informed, right, and kind of know the facts that you're engaging with. But I think that there's room for that to happen. I think the important thing is that people are backing away from the notion that you have to be an athlete and not a citizen.
Athletes continue to use their platform for advocacy. Will we still hear the term stick to sports? Or will we figure out a way to continue the conversation and affect change?